Good afternoon. So we'll be here with Sasha for that short presentation, a 25-minute presentation. We're planning on making some time for questions as well, just so you know. So what do we do very briefly? We work with Sasha for the European Commission. Anyone familiar roughly with what we do? But basically an EU institution. We are there to help the industry, protect consumers, different things. And us at the Commission, we don't vote laws, we don't run negotiations with member states, but we are there to make certain proposals and to look at the market and how to make it work. So how do we make it work? The first step is traditionally to know what we are looking at, to get some data on the sector that we are responsible for. And we have tons of colleagues responsible for agriculture, for defense, especially these times, and then we have only a handful responsible looking after the XR market and the media market as a whole. So what we have done is that we have commissioned a study on the sector. So I'll move to the next slide. Before talking about the study, in terms of our work on the XR market and virtual worlds, we have some policy initiatives and policy papers. You can have a look. It's a lot of words. And then we have actions for financing. So through the Creative Europe program. Anyone familiar with the Creative Europe program? A bit. So we do have some actions there to support the development of XR experiences. And we have also other actions, for example, networking opportunities. Events like those ones are supported by the European Commission. We can also build certain tools for the industry or help building them. And we can also finance training programs for XR professionals. But what we'll talk today about is more the market data. We have been commissioning studies, working with consultants, to create what we call the European Media Industry Outlook, published in September, so it's more or less fresh, compiling data from mostly 2023, 2024. And in this publication, you will get the link in the QR code towards the end. We are looking at different sectors, the traditional audiovisual sector, cinema, films, series, documentaries. We are looking at video games. Second sector, we are looking at news media journalism sector, and we're looking at the XR market. So trying to fill a gap there because there are relatively few studies looking at, let's say, having a 360 view on the XR market. So those four sectors I have now mentioned. I haven't said this is the second edition of that report, of the Outlook. We had one in 2023, where the information on the XR sector was quite scarce, so this one has a lot more. And we are looking at the market structure, what are the actors, the revenues, the consumption patterns. We have a lot of insights that Sasha will present. We're looking at industry trends and business models, how is the sector evolving, and we are looking at technology as well. What are the technologies impacting the sector? And we've relied on primary data, for example, consumer surveys, and secondary data by compiling existing data sets and making sense of existing data sets. And that's where I give the floor to Sasha, who will walk you through the different steps and pieces of data, and I'll say a few words towards the end.
So good afternoon. I think you can hear me already, right? Thanks a lot, Bastien, for giving me the floor. So my name is Sasha Baudet, and I will try to guide you through the main findings we have as a Commission identified from this European Media Industry Outlook and its related consumer survey. So first, let me start with some disclaimers. In our show, we saw things and we think they are important to highlight, but it may not be the case through your lens. So it's also important for us to have this Q&A session at the end of this presentation, because we are very much looking forward to hear your opinions, your views, what is missing, what would be interesting in knowing more, because Basically, for the Commission, the exercise on the XR sector in particular is to better understand this newcomer in the field of audiovisual and in the remit of its activity of supporting audiovisual sectors. Okay, if you compare to the previous edition of the European Media Industry Outlook, there were only some lines in it. There we had tried to develop not a comprehensive picture, but as much as possible a first batch of indicators to better understand these sectors. In addition, what we know is that the audiovisual industry are at the crossroad of several activities, whether culture directly with its own value, but also entertainment, information, and technological development per se. So basically, what we ended up with sometimes in this first edition of the Outlook is stating the obvious, but it was the first time that we did it, okay? So don't be afraid when starting the chapter, if you are brave enough to go through the Outlook and see XR is a composite technology. Yes, indeed, but we need to say it at least once to then further build on this first conclusion, this first observation, because consider that before this, in the case of the DigiConnect, we were just looking to define this technology, to further define it. Okay, so that being said, I will try to streamline a bit my intervention because we don't have that much time. So the first observation we'll make will be a market overview, okay? Defining revenues, the EU ecosystem, but also the employment trends, okay? Then we will jump into what we call industry trends with uses and business models, dependency, dependency, and then consumer trends, okay? Is it a reasonable program for you? Okay, perfect. Okay. Basically, we have created, or not we directly, but the independent researchers that conducting this exercise, a composite category called the immersive media market. And what is it? Because it's not obvious when you try to aggregate economic data. So what we define as the immersive media market, which is part of the broader immersive media in general, is VR and XR gaming, live events, museum and cultural experiences, music and concerts, sports, arcade studies, immersive theater, cinema and movies. So we try to broaden the scope as much as possible. And what we particularly find here is that Europe makes up 20% of all revenues generated in this field. So you will ask me why 25% here? Because as you can see, the UK is counted as well. So remove the 5% and now you have the EU 27. Okay, so that's the main finding. And an important point as well, these 20% represent an overall 10 billion increase in our calculation. So it shows over the years and compared to our previous studies how the market has grown over time. So it means that there is attraction, something is happening here, okay? So for us it's something to note because basically as a public institution, when you question the relevance of your action or your intervention, there's the rationale of helping an economic sector or not. So here we can say that it's not a booming, but it's an economic sector in development. So there is a rationale for a market intervention. Then about the ecosystem. So obviously we try to identify the main strengths and weaknesses of the sectors within the EU. So our understanding is that the European XR ecosystem is well known and renowned for its technological excellence and its capacity to produce high quality content. This has already been put into question for some extent. We used to give the example of high value
helmets, but apparently this has been challenged also by the fact between the time the report was drafted and the time we released it. So that's an open question also for the Q&A. What's your impression about what makes the strength of the EU XR ecosystem? We also saw, and this is confirmed by the number of patents of the industry, that research and development is clearly an asset of the European industry. But overall, we saw that there is still a fragmentation, which is a problem quite known at EU level. And this fragmentation will particularly express in the lack of resource-sharing networks, exacerbating by production inefficiencies and increasing operational costs. Okay? There is also a lack of industry-wide standards across many aspects of virtual and augmented realities in Europe. And from what we saw, application markets are often siloed and disconnected from broader initiatives. So it's an important point also as well for us, because we have a particular view on cross-sector cooperation. We think that XR could be a key enabler as a technology, and for us it was striking to see that the ecosystem, the European ecosystem, is actually still developing into national silos. About employment, which is an important part of the study. First, I should say that obtaining data on employment for the XR sectors is not an easy task at all. So what the researchers have done is basically to use LinkedIn as a proxy. Lucky for us, most of the people involved in the XR sector are what we can call tech savvy. So they are quite comfortable with using LinkedIn, and it helps us actually to spot a lot of competencies. One important aspect of this part of the research is that we saw that people are not directly or not necessarily saying, I'm an XR professional. They were saying, I'm a professional in a certain field with XR competencies, which shows how the entire XR ecosystem is yet to be a standalone one. Okay? They identified through the sectors, not in all cases, of course, but that was striking during the research exercise when we exchanged with the researchers, and they were saying, be aware of this. We had also to find a way to isolate them because they don't themselves. Okay, but all in all, we spotted 700 tech companies specialized in XR and around 5.5K professionals in XR in Europe. We saw three main, let's say, high spots for employment, which are Germany, France, and Finland, but we also noticed some really active hubs, such as the Netherlands, and also other parts of Eastern Europe and Northern Europe, and notably Poland. So now let's jump into the industry trends. So amidst the main uses in the media sectors, which are our focus today and in more general terms in this report, gaming has the lion's share, and by far, okay? And our findings were that this sector has pioneered the adoption of this technology, okay? But now it's followed by immersive experience, either in filmmaking context, but also in standalone dedicated experience centers, okay? Which is becoming an increasing aspect of the industry. And of course, there is art and culture in general, and notably for experiences in museums and individual tracks during exhibitions. And also a developing trend that has also forged the interest of some professionals, ad hoc cultural exhibition and often outside exhibition during specific events all over the world. So we saw this also as a cooperation among different sectors, but also as a way to channel investment and revenues within the industry. Okay, so now let's talk about the dependency of the European XR industry. Once again, these are the dependency we have identified. We don't say that this is a perfect picture, and we would be very interested in discussing also this particular aspect with you, who are the professionals directly exposed to the notion of relying to external or non-EU service providers. So overall, we find that developers are relying on foreign game engine and don't really have ownership on the distribution channels. So for us, that's the main pain. So basically, a striking figure is the share of Meta in the European XR market, which accounts almost for 40% of the total revenues, mastering the entire value chain from the experience to its distribution. There are also hardware dependencies in technology that are shared with other sectors, and that's the case for processor and what we call chips in the EU jargon, but basically semiconductors. And this could hinder the capacity of the industry to develop in Europe. So let's talk now also about the financing of the industry. And here there is an interesting figures according to us, which is of course the differences between the level of investment in the US compared to the EU, but also, and it's not reflected directly in this graph, but in the outlook you will find a tracking of the US investment, and you can see that Europe is becoming more and more attractive to them. And that's an important point, because it's not only about spotting the differences, it's also about spotting the attractiveness of the EU for foreign direct investments. And we noted this with a certain interest and perhaps even a certain form of enthusiasm, noting that EU investors were also coming in Europe for these technologies. So we are also monitoring the exit strategies of private investors. And there I would have said that there is very few exits compared to the level of investment. Even if you can say that those numbers are quite low, there are still not that much exits. So it also reflects in our understanding a certain level of maturity that has not been reached for the EU market, which is not negative or positive per se, but still, which means that highest level of return on investment have not been achieved for private investor jumping in this market. Okay, let's now talk about technological trends. And here it is. XR is a composite technology, so don't judge us too strongly. But indeed, for us, it's a composite technology. It's both a technology and a platform for the technology. It widespread the deployment of XR technology in Europe depend on advancement in hardware, software, IT infrastructure, individual technologies. Brief, in short, many things that are still to be developed and on which the EU could also intervene as a public institutions in general. So, being mindful of the time, I will try to directly jump into the consumer insights, because I think it's one of the biggest added value of this work, and I would like to show you some figures. So just to summarize, we also try to track employment and demand for skills differently. Yet the Eurostat classification is not perfect there, but you would find information in the outlook in this regard. Okay, so that was it for the industry picture, and now let's try to jump into the consumer insight. So first of all, we ask consumers, have you ever tried virtual reality or augmented reality? And I have to admit that compared to our expectations, the results were a bit low. But we have not lost the battle yet. Facing those kind of figures, we need to try to understand why. And basically, we ask for further research on this. And we had other indicators to compare the answers provided by consumers and what could be the reality actually in Europe. And one of these indicators is the number of monthly active users of apps that are extensively relying on XR technologies and and in particular augmented reality. And for instance, there are 260 million users of Instagram in July 2024 in Europe, as declared by Meta, according to the... Sorry? Okay. So basically, it would be 57% of the total EU population, compared to 71% saying that they have never tried it. So one of our conclusions is that it could be a misinterpretation of what is the technology, actually. People are not necessarily identifying when they are served with these technologies. So that's a first takeaway, an important one. So then we asked them in which environment they have tried VR. And most often, they declared that they have tried it at a friend's or a relative. But for me, one of the interesting figures is there. If you see the financial situation and the people that are using it through their own headset, you see that it's not an even one, but it's quite an interesting market penetration there because it's almost equal among different layers of financial situation. And for me, it shows how the technology could be seen as evenly appealing in terms of buying devices from providers. Okay. Then we asked them in which context they have tried AR, and there they were mostly identifying games and apps with no surprises for the usage. We also asked them what was their opinion on the experience they had. And most of them said, okay, we do not know the technology, but we also noticed that there were a difficulty to project themselves directly in using it more, okay? Although it's not perfectly spread as an opinion within all generations and diverse demographic indicators, it was striking because we go back to this problem of identifying the technology. How could you project yourself using a technology if you are not able to identify it when confronted to it? So most probably some of the people that answered the question were users of the technology, but since they are not able to identify it, they were also answering that they are not interested in using it more. So at this stage, it's only an assumption, but that's a track on which we would like to work in further editions of the report. So for those who have identified using VR and AR, most of them, and there is a strong consensus, you find those 40% everywhere, they think that it's a great technology. So basically, when a user is aware of using it, he is quite satisfied with it. There are that are even more satisfied, don't less, but you have this average 40% of users, no matter how you split them, which will answer, it's an interesting technology. And then we asked them in which environment they would be interested in using AR and VR. So pardon their answers, on the 38% that are not interested in using more. For us, we see it as 1/4 of Europeans are interested in using it more to play game or to watch films. But also, I want to highlight that they are also interesting in using it for training, and it's also interesting to see that some categories of age are perfectly aware of this benefit, and also to better understand complex or visual questions. So it really shows how XAI is at the crossroads of different applications, either for leisure, but also to train and work. I think it would be my conclusion here, because I only have, I don't even have any more time. But let's say that we also spotted that consumer demand is facing challenges, as mentioned, but it's expected to grow in the coming years. And that the market, the hardware market, is also expecting a rebound that is promising for the industry. Thank you very much, and let's open the floor for questions.
Just take one minute and then we don't take questions. Yeah, no. Okay, we won't have time for questions, but we're outside with Sasha. Funny thing, you have the QR code of the report on the left-hand side, consumer data on the right-hand side, so market, consumer. Just give. Thanks, Nikki.